Hey guys, welcome to the inaugural episode of Freelance Answers, my daily Q&A podcast / video show. And question number one comes from Sean Davis. So Sean's question was actually pretty lengthy. I'm not going to read the whole thing right here, but the long and short of it was he has a friend who does expat work. He works with expatriates. And usually the kind of the bread and butter work that he does is related to immigration for expats. Now, Sean's question was, a lot of what this friend of his ends up doing is seemingly unrelated to immigration work. You know, it's things that are other services that expats need, but do not tie directly to immigration. So the meat of Sean's question was this: Does it make sense to include seemingly unrelated services, even though they feel like a distraction? And what if these services get you in the door to sell core services? So Sean is an IT management consultant, and I'm going to make some assumptions. I haven't talked to Sean actually, but I'm going to assume that he does some sort of process improvement or helps companies who have workflows improve these workflows and so on. And the question that Sean is probably struggling with is actually something that I struggled with, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But it's probably something along the lines of a lot of his clients, a lot of Sean's clients probably don't know that they need process improvement, or they're not actively looking to improve their processes. So does it make sense to focus on kind of more auxiliary services that you could provide as a way of getting a new client? And I want to give you an example of how I do this. So my first product was or is a product called PlanScope. It's a project management tool for freelancers and agencies and consultants. And one thing that I learned kind of early on was that the relative volume of people looking for project management software for consultants, for freelancers, is kind of low. Like it wasn't, I built this thing thinking that there would be this huge market of people looking for software like this. And it just wasn't there. The organic volume, the Google volume just wasn't showing up. So I had to step back and I had to think, well, a company that needs project management software to help manage their client projects, what other things are they concerned with? And I thought of my own business. And I realized that in order to have a project management tool, you need a project to manage, right? So I could talk about getting projects. I could talk about writing proposals. I could talk about pricing. I could talk about all these things that are now on doubleyourfreelancing.com. They're kind of the focus of that website. But early on, a lot of the content that you see now on Double Your Freelancing used to live on the PlanScope blog. And this was intentional because I realized that, again, the volume of people looking explicitly for project management software for freelancers was low. So if I could kind of cover the rest of the pie, right? If project management is one slice of the pie, one kind of part of a freelancing business or an agency, if I could cover the rest of that, well, then I could, people who are looking for pricing advice or getting clients, they could come discover me that way, and then eventually kind of, I can then present to them PlanScope. And that's actually exactly what I've done over the last few years. And the comparable thing, I think, for most of us who do not have a product business but are instead selling services would be to step back and think, well, let's say you're doing mobile consulting, right? You build iPhone apps for clients. Usually this means that you're going to get a client who has already determined that they need a mobile app. They probably have some idea of what it should look like, what it should do, and then they seek out somebody like you. Now, if you can step back and think, well, what does the rest of the business look like for people that usually do this, right? What other needs do they have? And one need that I would think of would be the decision-making process to determine that, yes, a mobile app would be a good idea. And, what you could do is look at, well, if somebody is thinking, I have a website, gets a good amount of traffic, and I want to provide to my customers, the people on my website, a mobile equivalent of this website or a mobile app version of this website, that might make good sense for me and my business, right? And then they could step back and kind of, think about, well, what would that look like? What would that mean? And then they eventually get to the point where they're thinking, okay, I need to find a mobile developer. But if you could start earlier on and maybe have a service where you help people who have websites who might be on the brink of thinking, maybe I need a mobile app, you could provide a service there and then effectively upsell them, if it makes sense, to hire you to build the mobile app. So you could come in and maybe have a strategy service that you provide, which is maybe it's a report you create, or talk consulting mixed with a report. Often, I usually call this like a road mapping session, but it's something that could be even, oftentimes road mapping for me at least is a kind of like a project preliminary requirement. So this would be more pre-project preliminary service, I guess, where it's kind of like an exploratory service. It's a way to kind of help people who are not ready or not looking actively for your core competency and provide them with another valuable solution for something that is kind of a part of that same pie, a part of that same requirement set I guess, of their business. So I guess, Sean, the thing that I would ask you, or the takeaway that I would leave you with rather, would be look at the kind of clients that you typically work with and step back and think, what are some of the other needs that they often have? And while it could seem like you're diluting maybe or dithering your offering by venturing into these things that are seemingly unrelated, as you put it, a distraction, I would instead look at it as more of a funnel, right? A proper sales funnel, where instead of just getting clients who know they need management consulting, know they need to improve their workflows, know they need to improve their processes, look at other ways that you can deliver value to people that can ultimately funnel people toward that core service of yours. And ideally, you can do this in such a way that it's both profitable for you, right? I mean, you don't want to lose money or whatever else in doing these more preliminary services. But yeah, I think that's the advice I would leave you with, which would be, it's only a distraction if it doesn't actually point them in the right direction. So I would say to your expat friend, if the other work you're doing is not very profitable and it's not pointing people to eventually hiring you for your bread and butter, that immigration work you do, then I would probably cut it. But if it is funneling people toward hiring you for what your core service offering, then it's a very good strategy and it's something that works very well. So hopefully this helped, Sean. And if you would like to ask your own question, you can go to doubleyourfreelancing.com/ask, and I will see you tomorrow for my next answer to a reader question.